Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship here at the Circuit of the Americas for the American Grand Prix. Yes, it's round 11 of the No Assist Championship, the penultimate round of our first season on the F1 2018 game, and we still have championships to be decided. So tonight, my name is Gareth, your commentator, otherwise known as Captain Stiff. You can find me on Twitter at GT2_driving, and we are at, like I said, COTA, the Circuit of the Americas, held in Austin, Texas since 2012. Austin, one of the now many tracks that have held an American Grand Prix since the Formula One started heading over to the North Americas a long time ago. Of course, we've seen tracks such as Indianapolis, Phoenix, Watkins Glen, Riverside, Sebring, Detroit, Long Beach, and Las Vegas all hold Grand Prix, and of course the Miami Grand Prix is in the making, hopefully to be coming in the 2020 season, bringing a little bit of more mainstream media attention to a slightly more glamorous location than Austin, Texas. However, if you do have the opportunity to head out to Austin, I would definitely recommend it. Having been out there, it's really a wonderful city, and superb people, superb food, and if you get a chance to go out for a night out on 6th Street in Austin, Texas, I definitely recommend it. It is one to remember. But let's talk a little bit more about the track as we wait for the guys to all join the lobby. Of course, 12 drivers at the moment in the lobby. We're seeing a few, unfortunately, tonight, but Austin, Texas, it's a 5.51 kilometer. It's 3.42 mile long circuit, the ninth longest circuit on the calendar. 20 turns with a distance to turn 1, 280 meters up that steep incline towards turn 1. The left-hander longest straight is just under 1100 meters. That's just under 0.7 of a mile on the approach to turn 12. The cars will be hitting a top speed of around 199 miles per hour. It's 320 kilometers an hour. They'll be doing full throttle for around 63% of the lap, with gear changes around 54 per lap. So over the race distance, that's around 1,512 gear changes. So the guys definitely working hard on those shifters over the race distance. And of course, the track it was built to sort of emulate some slightly more famous circuits around the globe. Of course, you can see Sector 1 definitely using Maggotts and Beckett's from Silverstone in its inception, and the long turn, right-hand turn in Sector 3, I believe it is slightly like the famous Istanbul corner that never ends. So last week we had the Singapore race in Marina Bay. It was won by Nicky 9095, who won his first race of the season in a very challenging one indeed, in very tricky conditions. The changeable, we saw a wet, dry to wet race. The guys sticking it out there, the ones Nicky and Scott both staying out on the intermediate tyres through quite torrential rain through the mid part of the race, and managing to beat off Speed Queen 80, who unfortunately decided to come in for a set of extreme wets. Unfortunately, they were not the tyre to be on later in the race, so she dropped down to third position. She, although with the result there, she did actually pick up the title for Tier 1. Of course, we've got in our No Assist League, we've got Tier 1 and Tier 2. The Tier 2 guys are using the racing line. Tier 1 are not. So she picked up the Tier 1 title, and she actually needs 8 points over the final 2 races to take the overall title over Humbostone, who will be her closest challenger. He's a Tier 2 driver. Humbostone, who's still in the battle for the Tier 2 championship himself, sitting on 66 points, with Scopefielder on 60 and Delanger on 55. So there's still a 3-way battle for the Tier 2 championship. It's still waiting on a few guys here to start up, so we'll carry on going through things about to do with the track. So it's turn 1 around here. It's quite a demanding corner. Of course, you have that steep upcline onto the approach, but the corner itself is almost level, which forces the driver to brake and turn in over a crest. So it's very easy to lock a wheel into that apex. And equally, a clean exit out of turn 11 is also very important, because that long straightaway is really going to set you up down the DRS straight if you are following a car ahead, and equally to keep the car behind at bay. The cars seem to need to compromise between a medium and maximum downforce level. It reflects the number of slow corners around the lap and the long straights, but equally the fast corners. Cota's quite a strange circuit in its way it was built up. It's actually got more fast corners than Spa and more slower corners than the Hungaroring. So it makes the car setup a very interesting choice for these guys here, and it's definitely one that we'll look to see if they've especially and we'll see if the weather conditions make it into play as well. But we'll definitely see if the guys have it more set up for the long straight, or do they have it set up for those sweeping corners in Sector 1 and Sector 3. The racing is usually pretty eventful around here because there's several overtaking points around the lap, and we've seen people throw it up several corners, of course, into turn 1. If you've got the DRS up the hill is a good overtaking position, and equally at the end of the long straight at turn 11 and 12, I believe, is another good, obviously, overtaking. But then we've seen such as Max Verstappen throwing it up the inside into the long right-hander at turn 16, 17 and 18. You can get a move done there, and equally into turn 19 and 20 cars can run wide, and that can give you a good opportunity running up the inside. There is a high grip level around this track because it's a very new track surface. It's relatively new for cars to be running on. It's not used all too much at the moment, so it's a pretty fresh circuit, very grippy, and it lets track evolution definitely become pretty substantial as the race goes on. And you'll see the guys using around medium brake wear around here, so not having to worry too much about stamping too hard on that brake pedal. But we'll see in qualifying the guys, if they're pretty locked in with their lap, how precise they are through Sector 1. You know how we've seen, especially on strict difficulty of corner cutting, making it pretty as realistic as possible for these guys. It's so easy to corner cut in Sector 1, running over one of those curbs through that tight sweeping section as you move into turn 3, 4, 5 and 6. It's just ever so easy just to run over ever so slightly and invalidate that lap. And around here on a set of tyres, you'll essentially scrub them off so quickly because it's very easy to just ever so slightly outbrake yourself into a corner, or just find yourself just on the wrong side of the apex. And equally, what makes turns 2 to 9 Cota quite unique is they're constantly scrubbing off speed. So you actually, as much as you're trying to get as much out of them as possible, you're slowing down corner upon corner upon corner. You really do try to get back on the throttle as much as you can, especially between turn 7 and turn 8. But it's such the entry speed at turn 3 is around 181 miles an hour, but by turn 7 you've dropped down to 120, and equally by the exit of turn 9 you're down to around 116 miles an hour, if not even slower. And it's then that kick down from turn 10 where you get around up to about 180 again once until turn 11, which is at 65 mile an hour turn. And then obviously that DRS straight is what gets you all the way down to turn 12, where the cars will be doing around 196 to 199 miles an hour. Hitting turn 12 around 68, and then you go into the stadium section at turn 13, 14, 15, and then of course you've got the Istanbul-esque turn 16, 17 and 18. Seems like it goes on forever around the Grand Plaza. Turn 19 is around 122 miles an hour. You get to the lowest point of the track at turn 20, and that's 155 miles an hour. Brake really harshly down into the left-hander at turn 20, and that sets you off across the start-finish line for a new lap. And of course, Cota is actually one of the 5 anti-clockwise tracks on the calendar. Of course, the others: Baku, Singapore, Interlagos, and Abu Dhabi. So not what the drivers are used to. However, of course, we were in Singapore last week and we're in Interlagos next week. So it is 3 rounds of anti-clockwise tracks for these guys to finish off the season with. So they should be getting used to doing some left-hand turns. The United States Grand Prix, it's had, like I said, a very long and varied history. It's been staged at 10 different venues since it was first included in the World Championship back in 1959. But the Circuit of the Americas is its actual first purpose-built track for Formula One. So the rest were used either as ex-NASCAR, IndyCar, or just street circuits that were just plucked out. We've seen even driving around a car park in the middle of a casino. In some of the races, before actually getting up onto the highway and freeway for some of the overtaking positions there. But it's COTA's the first place that we've seen a real track built, and it's starting to become definitely a favourite for some and real disdain from others. You can either find yourself loving or hating this place, as it can be a very tricky one to round it. It was actually Bruce McLaren that won the country's inaugural race back in 1959. And so, but the popularity in the F1, it has sort of faltered over the years. Of course, we had the real debacle in the mid-2000s, I believe it was 2005, at Indianapolis, of course, where you had the issue with the Michelin tyres not being able to take the race. And of course, you only had the Bridgestone runners, and that was the Minardis, the Jordans, which were very much backmarkers at the time, and the Ferraris were the only ones able to contest the race. Of course, the crowd showing their quite well-deserved anger towards the race as it was held there. Only 6 cars finishing, but a podium, I believe it was, for I want to say Giorgio Pantano, but I think I might be wrong. I believe it might have been his teammate, but obviously it was Barrichello and Schumacher that stood on the top 2 steps. And we see here it's a slightly overcast day at Austin, so we can see the helicopters doing circles. We'll have a look and see who's the first one out on track to see what the track surface is going to be like. And I've just had the weather report in, and it's going to be a dry session in both race and qualifying conditions. So dry for the guys here, which I'm sure they will all be absolutely delighted with. And it is Joel V520 who leads us out on track first. And Joel, having picked up some much better points later in the season, struggled in the first half of the season with a little bit of consistency, and he's definitely improved in the second half. And we'll sit on board with Joel as he does his out lap here at COTA. As you can see, that section there in the early part of the lap at 3, 4, 5 and 6, just getting out there at the moment. We'll check to make sure what everyone's deciding on when it comes to tyre wear, and it looks like it's ultra soft for everyone at the moment, apart from Mike, who's gone for the soft compound. So Mike definitely deciding to go for a harder compound, see what he can get out of them, and then run the softer ones possibly later in the session. Or as we see a Red Bull all out of shape at the back there, that's Tony Y there. It would just kick the rear end of that Red Bull out on the exit of turn 11 there. So got the power on a little bit too early, maybe a little bit too eager on the right foot. As we see Joel here coming around turn 12 into turn 13. Very tight, twisty, and the track slightly uneven here. So you can see, yeah, locks up the left front there. And expertly done there by Joel. Turn 15 I actually find quite a tricky one there. It's slightly the car seems to bottom out ever so slightly. You can find yourself really kicking the rear end out there, and you see another left front lock up there for Joel. He's got a yellow in sector 3. Believe it might be for another slow Red Bull of Tony Wise. Joel's going to be the first one to cross the line and start his flying lap here, the No Assist Championship with Invictus Racing League. Check out the website invictusracingleagues.com for all of the updated tables. And equally, if you want to get on board with us for the next season, make sure you check up the sign up page. But we are here on board as Joel, as he heads through turn 3, turn 4 into turn 5, the left right hander. Turn 5 turns into turn 6 and down into turn 7. Get it turned in nice and tidy there for Joel as he makes his way round turn 8 and into turn 9. Slight kink at turn 10 just here. He runs over it nicely. Now it's getting it slowed down in time for turn 11. It hits the apex nicely there. Now it's a slight run to the DRS zone. Get as much power down as possible. Flap on that DRS opens now. Straight down, 199 miles an hour all the way down to turn 12. The car is going full pace now. Stamp on those brakes. Get it slowed down. Try not to lock up as much as possible. Nicely run over the apex there at turn 12. Up into the stadium section. Turn 13, 14 and 15. Right, and then a left seems to go on. Don't let the car go from underneath you. Nicely held there from Joel as he exits turn 15 there into turn 16, 17 and 18 all fall into one. And then we come into the final two corners at turn 19, run it all the way down to turn 20, get it slowed down, run over the apex ever so slightly across the line, and Joel V520 does our first timed lap of a 1:35.501. So he goes provisional pole ever so slightly before Tony Y does a 1:34.862. So the power in that Red Bull ever so slightly better than Joel's. SJD 1988 does a 1:35.347. And there goes Stifler 1980 back in his second race back in the league after some time out, and Stifler does a 1:35.2. Delanger 93 takes provisional pole in the Renault at the moment, 1:34.5, so a second faster than Joel. Mike doing a 1:37.1 with the soft compounder tyre on at the moment. As you see there, we've got Scopefielder taking the provisional pole at the moment, 1:33.3, an absolutely electric lap there from Scopefielder in the Force India. Superb in the Haas, sorry, not the Force India, and absolutely superb lap there from the Swedish driver as he gets himself out onto provisional pole. And we'll go down on board with Speed Queen 80, our current, or the Tier 1 champion and current leader of the overall championships, coming around the final corner now in the Williams. So she's going to be slightly underpowered around here. What is she going to set as a banker lap? It looks like it was invalidated. So Speed Queen 80 possibly having to go for another lap on those ultra soft tyres. So we'll check out on board who else is out there. It's Rick WR88 back in the league. He's coming around in the McLaren. Goes across the line, and it's front row at the moment, a 34.3 for Rick, but you can see there just how fast Scopefielder went. It's a second faster than anyone else on track at the moment, so Scope absolutely blowing the field apart at the moment with the pace in that Haas, and the Haas fans will be absolutely delighted. Of course, that American-based team run by famous US driver and manufacturer Gene Haas, and he'll be absolutely delighted with Scopefielder's lap so far as we see Boy Better Know His Speed. That's Scott. He's going to come across the line in the second Toro Rosso. And he takes second position off of Rick, and so it's a 34.1. So no one else able to break into 33 so far. Only Scopefielder out there at the moment that's managed to drop well into the 33s, and it will be very, very impressive to see Scope even get near to that time again. And he must have really locked in a pretty perfect lap. As we'll go on board once again with Speed Queen. We'll see if she's going for another flyer or whether she does come in and decide to set another, or put another set of fresh tyres on. Exits turn 19 there into turn 20. Yeah, so she is going to set this timed lap. Speed Queen's going to come across the line. She does her first lap and it drops into 6th position with 1:34.9, so just under the 34s there for Speed Queen 80, your champion-elect for Tier 1 and almost for Tier 2. She knows that 8-point swing over Humbo Stone would take the title, as she would take, or as it looks like we do have a few spots of rain in the pit lane at the moment, so the rain is out. And this is really going to compromise. It looked like we were meant to have a dry session, but it's, yeah, there's definitely spots of rain falling in the pit lane. You can see slight rain falling on the back straight here as Mike trundles down the back straight here towards turn 12. So possibly not the dry session that these guys were expecting, and maybe having a few words with their race engineers and their weather engineers, who would have given them the option of going onto the dry tyres. And like I say, good evening to everyone watching. It's great to have you watching the stream. Feel free to drop into the comments if you've got any questions, if you'd like to see anything, or if you'd like to hear about anything. Feel free to drop them in. It's always great to see people watching, getting engaged with the stream. And of course, if you're not already, please follow the stream. It's always good to get as much notoriety and make sure that Invictus gets bigger and better week upon week. Of course, we have been running this league for a long time, and we want to make sure we become one of the best leagues in Europe for you to get some really competitive and excellent no assist racing. Well, not just no assist, of course, no assist and assist racing. You can find several races across the week as Tony Y it goes across the line to start a flying lap. Of course, these guys, knowing that the rain is starting to come down now, they need to go out and set a lap before the track starts to get a little bit too slick, and it starts to become very tricky for these guys. And Tony out there in the Red Bull doing that tricky first section. Of course, the damper this track gets, the harder it will become for these guys to make sure they can stay on the black stuff and keep it from going offline. And Tony here, as he exits turn 8 and turn 9, you can see the rain starting to spit ever so slightly here, so it's definitely going to start hampering these drivers if they stay in the pit lane too much longer. But Scope's back out on track, so he's not happy with his 33.3. He wants to go out and set an even faster time. Could we possibly even see him drop into the 32s? I mean, 4 tenths off would be a pretty almighty increase, but with being almost, well, apart from Scott, who's managed got himself within a second, everyone else is struggling to get anywhere near the Haas car at the moment. As we see Tony slowing the car down here as he comes into the stadium section and turn 14 into turn 15 here. Strains the car up now, get it around. You've got to get as much grip out of these tyres as possible around. You see the sparks kicking up from underside of the floor of that Red Bull. Nicely done there. Runs out slightly wide onto the exit of turn 19 there, but it looks like he should be able to continue with that. He's going to go across the line. Currently 5th position. Tony Y goes 2nd with a 34 flat, so perhaps getting a little bit more out of the tyres than what he did in his first lap. So great lap there from Tony Y. Scopefielder at the moment looks like he's coming around to finish his out lap. Or I might even, no, he's coming out of turn 11, so he will be on his fast lap. We've got a yellow at the end of the straight at the moment. We'll look to see if there's possibly a stricken car down there, or possibly it's just someone slow offline. DRS still activated at the moment, so the rain not affecting these guys too much at the moment. You saw the DRS flap close shut on that Haas of Scopefielder. He's coming around into the stadium section now, so we'll look to see, can Scope improve on that 133.399 that we saw him set with his first lap around 5 minutes ago. SJD puts himself up onto the front row of the grid with a 133.8, so SJD up into the 33s. Is there track evolution happening? Will we see these guys go quicker and quicker as Schofield is going to come across the line? Does he improve his eye? Oh, it's running very deep into the final turn, but he does take 2 tenths of a second off of his time as Scopefielder getting quicker and quicker every lap, and 7 tenths of a second to Tony, to SJD, and equally, 9 tenths of a second to Tony. It looks like Scopefielder might already have tied up that pole position, but with 6 minutes and 32 seconds left to go, you can never say never in Invictus Racing League. We've seen some absolutely blinding last lap escapades from a lot of drivers, as you see Scott locking up that front left there. As we enter turn 11, he's going to go down onto the long straight. DRS is going to come open up that slight hill. Luckily, the Renault getting out of the way for the Toro Rosso driver as he heads down towards turn 12. Full pace, 199 miles an hour if you've got the right setup. Locks up ever so slightly. That's going to cost him possibly a fraction of a second as he enters the stadium section at turn 13 and 14. Around into turn 15 now. Oh, it's a big lock up there. It's going to cost him a little bit of time. Slightly scrappy start and middle part of the lap for Scott. We'll see if he can possibly improve on that 134.103 that he set earlier on, sitting just under 1 second away from pole position at the moment. Scott's going to come across the line, and the Toro Rosso doesn't look to improve, so perhaps another lap for him as he goes out. Rick is going to come across the line. Looks like he's going to set another time. Oh, it actually looks like he's slowing down, so Rick possibly invalidating that lap, so he sits there around 0.03 of a second behind Scott in 5th position. So Rick currently on the 3rd row of the grid, joined at the moment by Delanger, who's on his outlap on the ultra soft tyres. Nicky 9095, last week's race winner, is out on a set of super soft tyres, so possibly if the track getting a little bit colder with this rain coming down, that the harder tyres will work ever so slightly better. Of course, they work in slightly colder conditions, so is this a little bit of a gamble for Nicky? Does he want to hopefully use the super soft tyres, go a little bit quicker than what he did on his banker lap of that 134.8, and possibly go up in to using the super softs for the race. We know it's going to be a dry race later on as well, so these guys here, it is all about strategy when it comes to tyre choice in qualifying. You want to set your fastest time on the tyre you reckon you'll get the most out of. Scott's going to go, it's going to go very deep there into turn 15. That's going to really compromise him on the exit. And we'll look to see, does he bail out of this one? It doesn't look like he's going full throttle around there. We'll look to see when he comes around the exit of turn 19. Oh, he is pushing hard. He's running about slightly wide, so he is going to... No, he does bail out of it, so looked like he was going to stick with it, but he does bail out. Equally, I believe Rick was out on a slow one, so we'll see how... we'll see how Stifler 1980 is doing. He's coming up to turn 16, 17 and 18 now around the sweeping right hand corner. Nicely done there for Stifler as he just winds up the car, ready to set this final lap with 3 minutes 33 left in the session. The Force India comes across the line, ultra soft tyres fitted to the car as it heads down towards turn 1 up the hill, doing about 69 miles an hour. Gets it slowed down a little bit too much there. Looked like he ran over the apex at turn 1. That's going to compromise him on lap time as he heads into turn 2. The rain's starting to come down a little bit heavier now, it seems. And Stifler here getting round the complex at turn 3 through turn 6 at the moment, into turn 6, into turn 7. Stifler 1980. He's back, but he's currently sitting in 11th position at the moment. Qualified lower down the grid last week out. I believe he started either he definitely started on the back row, but managed to pick up some positions over the race and actually come home. I believe it was with 5th position finish, so not one to count out when it comes to the race. He may be slightly slower in qualifying as he gets back into the swing of league racing after a few races out, so definitely one to watch. We know he's got race pace. It's just locking in that one lap pace, or you can see a double front right lock up there for Force India as he enters the stadium section now. In through turn 15. Manages to get this car straightened up pretty quickly, so nicely done there for Stifler, having to not put full throttle now, so the car's struggling to get full throttle down through turn 16. He's going to continue with it. He's currently on a 135.263. Does he improve? He does. He goes for a 134.291. Puts himself up into 7th position at the moment. So currently 4th row as Rick retires from the session. Happy with his 5th position at the moment. Tony doesn't look to be going any faster at the moment. SJD is coming down the straight towards turn 12 at the moment. DRS wide open of the Renault, currently sitting on the 2nd row of the grid in 3rd position at 133.828 at the moment. Scope is on another lap, so seeing that Tony's managed to get onto the front row with that 133.612, so Tony now within 5 tenths has possibly made Scope go out and just see if he can go even quicker and possibly even dip into the 132s, a higher than 132 would be absolutely wonderful for Scope as he looks to have sewn up pole position, but we will see as SJD comes across the line, kicks the rear end out, and he's going to have lost all that time that he possibly would have gained there. A real shame for SJD, of course, race winner in France earlier this season in that torrentially wet race that we saw, and SJD with the perfect strategy call when we were driving around Paul Ricard, and now sitting in the 2nd row of the grid at with Scott currently in 4th, and we can see Scott now heading around is that turn 11 there, so he's now coming on to the start to the DRS straight. Humbo Stone out on the super soft tyres equally with Nicky 9095, who's out there on those super softs. Humbo Stone in 7th, the nearest challenger to Speed Queen 80 for the overall title. Speed Queen sitting down in 10th position at the moment, so possibly not enjoying Kota as much as some of the others. We see time has now expired on the session. Tony Wise, the first one to cross the line and not improve, so it's going to be a 33.6 for Tony. He currently sits in 2nd. SJD, I don't believe we'll be going any faster at the moment. Scott is going to be first one to finish up a fast lap as he's going to come around a final corner now at turn 20. And boy, better know SB are currently a 134.1. Gers a 133.928, so exactly 1/10 of a second behind SJD. So Scott not improving on his time, as it looks like we saw. Oh, it's a whole gaggle of cars there. So we've got Mike in the Ferrari, who's currently out on the super soft tyres, did 136.3 on his first time lap on the softs. He's going to come across the final corner at turn 20, and Mike is going to do a 135.7. So we've got a few other cars coming across the line now. Speed Queen is going to go from 134. Oh, she makes up 1/10 of a second, whereas Nikki's going to come across the line now. So Speed Queen not improving, she stays in 10th. Nikki kicking the rear end out of that, but he does manage to move up using ultra soft tyres to 134.212. So Nikki was moving. Oh, Nikki moved up 4 positions there, and Joel has bailed out that lap as well. So it looks like that will be your results for the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship penultimate race round 11 Grand Prix qualifying. And it is the Swedish driver Scopefielder that takes a pretty fantastic pole position. Absolutely dominated the session, was going so much faster than everyone else, and Scope would be absolutely delighted at almost 5/10 lead over the rest of the field. And if he can put that into a race pace, then we think we might see a pretty dominant display from him as we go around. And he's still in the battle for the Tier 2 championship fight. And Scope's still in the battle for Tier 2. Of course, Humbo Stone and Speed Queen will both be eyeing up each other when it comes to the overall title. And yeah, guys, feel free to let us know. Who do you think? Does Scope have it? Has he got the race pace, or was that just one lap pace that we saw from him? As we see there, your qualifying results, sorry. The Haas of Scopefielder takes pole position, 1:33.1, 0.4 of a second ahead of Tony Wine, the Red Bull. SJD comes in third with Scott, that's Boy Better Know, SB in fourth. The third row of the grid is Rick WR88 with Nikki 9095. Delanger 93 and Humbo Stone share out row 7th, 8th, sorry, and Humbo Stone and Stifler 1980 are in 8th and 9th. Speed Queen stays in 10th, I believe it was, and then you had Mike at the bottom with Stifler, I believe. Sorry, I missed it, talking far too slowly, but yeah, so good to see the comments coming in, guys. Scopefielder, Sweden hype coming in. So we've definitely got some Scope fans in the comments tonight. Hard to bet against Scope for the race win after that. Yeah, Sab, absolutely. Scope, you saw just how pacey he was there, and he's definitely one to look out for come the race time. And of course, guys, if this is your first time you've ever caught up with any Invictus streams, make sure you check out our website, invictusracingleagues.com. We do have races on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday nights. It's the No Assist Championship on Mondays. On Tuesday night, we've got Realistic Performance 1 and Realistic Performance 2. And then on Wednesday, we have F1, F2 and F3 equal performance races with a PC league and an Xbox league in development at the moment. So we've definitely got you covered for all of your esports on Formula 1. So make sure you check out the website and sign up if you're not already involved. Equally, if not, follow the streams of all of the races that we have over the week. You can find that on our Twitter at InvictusRL. Equally, you can find GT2_driving. That's my Twitter, where I'll be posting all of the stream links when it comes to race time. But here we can see as the guys readying up, speaking to their race engineers at the moment, trying to get those setups ready. And it'll be interesting to see what they go for, especially the guys that are starting outside of the top 10. And it's all about patience around here. We're not trying to get too racy too early or into the stint, because burning out those tyres, and you will find that overheating can be a little bit of a problem around here, especially on the longer stints, and especially on these guys that will be running the ultra soft tyres, that you really don't want to take too much life out of it too early on in the stint, because you'll find yourself having to make that early dash into the pit lane. And although the pit lane here is quite short, it's relatively short compared to a lot of other tracks around here, you do feed in right into that uphill climb, so you really do lose out on power. As you see, the formation lap is now starting. We'll just check out the tyre detail for these guys, and it's a soft compounder tyre for Mike. Joel, sorry, I missed out Joel with Stifler. Joel came in 11th position. He's starting on the super softs. It's Speed Queen that's starting on the ultras, so the only one inside the top 10 that managed to set a faster time on the harder compound was Humbo Stone on the supers, currently sitting in 8th position. So Humbo Stone, there's definitely potential for an upset there. He will have a slightly, possibly a slight better advantage when it comes to later in this stint compared to these guys on the ultra soft tyres. Scopefielder leading the field around at the moment, getting as much warmth into those tyres and brakes, and making sure, of course, it's such a heavy braking point into turn 1 here up the hill. You really want to make sure that you've warmed up the car, you've warmed up those brakes, and equally you're ready. The nerves aren't getting to you too much, and it's pretty even around here when it comes to lefts and rights. Like I said, it is one of the 5 anti-clockwise tracks of the race calendar, but it's 11 left corners and 9 right corners around here. Elevation change is around 130 feet from the exit of turn 20 up until turn 1, so you can see how much they climb that hill up towards turn 1. And like we said, it's 3.41 miles around the track, so that's around 5.513 kilometers. So that's that 280 meter drag up to turn 1. The track around here is actually very wide because it's it's built to accommodate many different cars. So obviously you've got your NASCAR, IndyCar. Equally, the MotoGP will be, I believe, have started racing around here, but the track around here around 42 to 52 feet wide, so there's definitely room for racing around here. You shouldn't see anyone go too close wheel to wheel. Hopefully these guys will give themselves a lot of room, as we see a wonderful shot there from the front wing of Scopefielder as he lines up in position now, just crawling up towards that line. Don't go over it. Of course, it's got that sensor on that yellow strip to the right hand side to make sure he's in the right position, as we see the rest of the cars forming up behind Charlie Whiting in that box to the left hand side next to the line. Will be setting up the time any second now, as we see 1 light, 2 light, 3, 4 lights, 5 red lights. They seem to be held for what feels like forever, and finally we're away as Scopefielder leads the field away up the hill. It looks like it's been a pretty decent start for the Swedish driver, as we see it, guys. As we see that was the boy better no SB. That was Scott that went spearing across. Looked like he came into contact possibly of Tony there. It's a really unfortunate there for Scott. He's picked up front wing damage, but Scopefielder leads the field away. Tony Y in second, SJD stayed in third. Looks like the guys behind just about keeping it clean. As Joel at the back as well has had a poor getaway as well. He's but both Toro Rosso drivers sitting way at the back at the moment, so awful start for France, for Frank Tost and his Toro Rosso guys. Scopefielder leads the field into turn 11 for the first time down the long straight. Of course, these guys really be stretching it when it comes to attacking each other, and we're going to go hopefully on board with Nicky 9095, who's got a huge gaggle of cars here together as we head down towards turn 12 for the first time. We go 3 wide into turn 12. Superb drive from these guys to keep it out of each other. Nicely done there. No one getting into contact. Like I said, it's a very wide track around here. We can see Scott starting to crawl back now. He's starting to pick up his positions. He's starting to hassle the rear end of Mike as he goes down the inside into turn 13. Great move there as we see a battle here between the Sauber, the McLaren and the Williams of Nicky, Rick and Speed Queen, all fighting over 7th, 8th and 9th at the moment. Rick's going to go wide. It's hard to hold around there. You can see Scott, he's trying to make up for lost time, throws it down the inside. Brilliant move there for Scott. As we see, it's an early stop here for the Sauber of Nicky 9095, so it must be wing damage for him after contact, possibly with Scott or Joel. Couldn't quite see it earlier in the start, but Scott not waiting up for anyone at the moment. After having that incident at the start, he's back up to 8th position, and there'll be thunder in the cockpit of that Toro Rosso, and he will be absolutely incandescent with rage. I'm sure he saw himself possibly with a good position ahead, with possibly challenging Scope over the first lap, but unfortunately dropping down to 8th position. Scott now 0.4 of a second behind Speed Queen 80 in the Williams. The Toro Rosso will go up against the Williams into turn 11. Does he have the pace on the Williams driver, as it looks like he's closed up a lot over this first sector of that? Kicks the rear end ever so slightly there, but Scott, he's going to tuck right in behind the rear wing of the Williams driver. Of course, DRS not activated just yet, so he will have to wait one more lap. He's going to use that aero assisted overtake on the Williams of Speed Queen 80, locking up that front right again. Once again, we've seen a bit of a pretty much a special once again. So Scott maybe a little bit too heavy on that brake pedal. We saw in qualifying locking up ever so slightly a couple of times through laps. So Scott possibly just a little bit too aggressive early in this race, possibly trying to get back up into a position. As you see the Humberstone going wide there, and the McLaren of Rick WR88 going wide there, as we see now Scott really tucked up behind Speed Queen as we go up towards turn 1. It's the climb, not close enough to make a move into turn 1. It's all about staying in behind the car in front as they come around turn 3, 4, 5 and into turn 6. Need to make sure you're not disturbed by that dirty air in front. It can really unbalance the car. And what we'll do, in fact, is we'll go on board with Scott as he follows Speed Queen around out of turn 7 there into turn 8, turn 9, through the kink of turn 10, now towards turn 11 for the first time. He will have DRS, but it looks like Speed Queen might just have been outside of DRS range of Humberstone ahead. So of course it is Humberstone and Speed Queen that will be battling over the overall title. So these two will be looking at each other, but Scott is going to have a look possibly down to the inside. Is Speed Queen going to give him the room? They go side by side. She's not going to give him anything. We know just how much she doesn't like letting anyone past at all. There's a reason why she's the champion in this league so far. Scott has to really hammer on the brakes there as he tries to not hit the rear diffuser and the gearbox of the Williams in front of you. You can see how much time that's cost him. We've got a yellow in sector 1, and it's SJD 1988 who's lost it coming out of turn 16 and 17. Was there contact between the two Renault cars there? And really unfortunate for SJD, who's dropped all the way down from 4th down into 9th position at the moment. So we see Speed Queen, Scott and now Rick starting to get involved as well. These guys all within a second of each other. So Scope Fielder already stretching out a 3-second lead over Stifler 1980, who's made it all the way up into 2nd position at the moment. We'll see that it's been a pretty explosive start for Stifler 1980. 7 positions gained over the first 3.5 laps of the race so far. Stifler 1980 moving all the way up from 9th position into 2nd at the moment. Tony Wise dropped down into 3rd position. It's 3 places gained for Delanger 93 in the Renault. Humberstone up 3 positions into 5th. Speed Queen up 4 into 6th. You can see Scott losing 3 there after that collision on turn 1. Equally, Rick suffering 3 lost positions. Mike's made it up into 9th position on the soft compounder tyre, so good start from Mike there. Nicky, unfortunately, with that early pit stop. Equally, it looks like SJD and Joel have both made stops. Yeah, they have. So it stops there for the bottom 3, who will really be slightly inconvenienced by that. You can see a soft runner for SJD, put on a set of the yellow walled soft tyres, try and run those as long as possible. Of course, with 24 laps to go, it will be pretty tricky to get those tyres to last as long as that, as we see these guys still pretty close to each other. Scott really on the ragged edge as he exited turn 19 there. He's going to come up behind. It looks like we've got Joel already possibly getting to the point where he's it's Tony, sorry. Tony must have dropped out because he's been overtaken by Humberstone. I thought it was a lap car for a second. I wasn't expecting to see Tony overtaken by Humberstone there. So I do apologise. He ran very much along the left-hand side of the track there. and looked like Humberstone's just gone right around the outside of him, as Speed Queen now right up behind Tony. So is Tony starting to suffer with overheating already 5 laps into the race, and you can see he's starting to get swarmed by the cars behind, and he's not going to want to look in his mirrors at all, because he's just going to see a white and blue flash of that Rexona Williams behind, and equally that Toro Rosso, as you can see Speed Queen dives down into turn 11 there before the DRS zone, and equally Scott is going to want to tuck in behind the sister team, and he's going to come right out and past. He's going to have that DRS assistance. Tony is going to be a sitting duck here as he lets both cars pass, and equally Rick behind's going to want to have a piece of that Red Bull if he's going to get past, and Tony dropping like a stone at the moment. So really unfortunate for the Scottish driver, who's starting to look like suffering with pretty bad overheating of those tyres at the start of this race. As Schofield at 3.3 seconds in the lead at the moment. Delanga 93 will go on board with quickly, who's now 0.7 of a second behind Stifler 1980 in the Force India, as these two battle over second and third position. So the Renault here of Delanga crossing the line, 0.7 of a second at the moment. You can see the Force India just up ahead at the moment. So Stifler going very, you can see just how different their lines are into turn 1. Stifler going very acute into the corner, and whilst Delanga going for a much wider entry into it. So possibly a slightly overly defensive move there from Stifler, thinking that Delanga was going to have a saw down the inside of him into turn 1. So these two are going to go right at it, it seems, down into turn 10. That slight kink just now. You can see just how close the Renault is, and Delanga, of course, he's been pretty decent over the midpoint of the season here in the No Assist Championships in Tier 2. Picked up the race victory, I believe it was in Belgium, but he's going to be tucked right in behind the rear wing of Stifler 1980, and we'll try and get a view where you can actually see the car ahead, and there's 0.2 of a second between, 0.1 of a second. Stifler 1980 takes the inside, but Delanga's going to have to go around the outside if he's going to get the move done. He doesn't quite get it. Nicely defended there from the Force India driver. Oh, as you can see, just about keeping the Renault behind, but the Dutchman, Delanga 93, is not usually one to be held up, and he usually tends to find his way past. We know he's a very good overtaking driver. He knows where to put that car when it comes to driving around these tracks, and Stifler 1980 is definitely going to have a battle in his hands, and he goes wide. Speaking of having a battle in his hands, that's going to really compromise him getting out onto those. Now, hopefully there won't be too many marbles offline at the moment, because it's only early in the race, but you're not going to want to spend too much time out there, and of course you will be finding yourself in trouble with the stewards if you take liberties. As you can see, yeah, once again it's a defensive line into turn 1 for Stifler, but he's run deep into the exit, and these two are going to go side by side as we go round turn 2 and into turn 3 here. Luckily it wasn't a side by side. We've seen it happen before, and it doesn't tend to end up well. It's following cars side by side around here is pretty much impossible through turn 3, 4 and 5. But Renault really struggling to get past that Force India. Of course, the Force India's got much better straight line speed, as Joel picks up a 3-second time penalty. Multiple warnings. We know how easy it is around here to pick up those penalties. But it looks like Stifler's gone deep once again. That's going to allow Delanga up the inside. These two are going to go side by side, and it's done already before we even get to the DRS zone. So this is where Delanga needs to utilise that DRS to defend from the Renault, which is going to be right in the slipstream. Oh, you can see he had to go to the inside early. The Force India is going to try and go around the outside. Delanga's have to go defensive, and he maintains the position. Great overtake there for Delanga 93. Got the move done into turn 11 after Stifler went wide, and luckily there he was able to fend off that strong attack, back or counter attack from the Force India. As those two battle over second and third. We'll go down and we'll check in with Rick as he follows Nicky ahead. So Nicky, having made that stop earlier on in the session after front wing damage, is now out on a set of super soft tyres. Rick made an early stop as well, so Rick coming off of the ultra soft tyres that he started as well, back onto another set of ultras, so possibly a two-stop strategy for the McLaren of going onto the soft compounder tyre later in the race, maybe even the super soft if he can stretch these ultras out a little bit longer. You can see Nicky's going to have to defend from the Canadian of Rick WR88. Oh, Oh, and Nicky's lost the end. It's got a huge bit of snap oversteer there. He's having to defend. And Rick's going to get DRS as they head up the hill into turn 1. Going to the inside. Nicky's going to take the inside. Is it an up and under? Or he's going to go around the outside. Does he get it done? It's a superb overtake from really, really nicely done there from the McLaren driver. Right around the outside. I don't think Nicky was expecting that at all. As unfortunately, it looks like Joel may have retired from the race knowing that he was down the bottom and really, really struggling. And so superb overtake there from Rick, as we see now Tony starting to catch up to the rear end of Speed Queen, and Richard P2 and P3 fighting. Great for Humberstone. Yeah, it is. Humberstone will start catching up to these two. Luckily, I think now that De Lange has got the move done on Stifler, it might hold him up ever so slightly, but Humberstone needs as many points on Speed Queen as possible. So Tony Y taking another position off of Speed Queen would be just what the Haas driver of Humberstone wants. It would be pretty handy for him if the Red Bull could do him a favour and get past Speed Queen, who's not seemingly enjoying Kota at the moment, not been as pacey around here as we've seen her in the last 4 races, where she's picked up 4 consecutive second place finishes. So as Nicky runs wide, gets a 3-second time penalty, and equally you can see Tony there just deciding to make up his own track there for the last 2 corners, it seems, with very wide through turn 18 and turn 19 there, so losing a whole bundle of time there. You can see that he's lost 1.2 seconds. It's a pit stop for Scott, who's dropped down now onto the set of soft compound tyres, so he's going to drop all the way down to 11th position. So if Scott's going to get anything done, as Stifler picks up a 3-second time penalty, and Scott as well, so Scott possibly running over the apex too much at turn 1 there and picks up a 3-second time penalty. So if Scott wants to get some positions back on this, he's going to have to overtake everyone all over again. So really, really unfortunate there for Scott after what looked like a good start to the race. And we'll go on board here, we'll just check with Rick, who's now starting to come back at Tony. So after Tony had that sort of fleeting opportunity at getting past Speed Queen a lap ago, looks like he's dropped back, and now he's going to start falling into the clutches of Rick, who's on the much faster tyre. I say much faster, he's on 1 stage earlier faster tyre, so it's a slightly softer compound for Rick, both having done 3 laps on their tyres at the moment. But Rick will be needing to get past Tony if he's on those harder compound tyres for his own race. Currently 0.6 of a second behind. And it's a pit stop for the leader, and for second and third. So 8 laps is all these guys can do on the tyres. We'll see. And Humberstone comes in as well. So yeah, it's the top 4 all decide to come in. They're not going to allow themselves to get an undercut on each other. So it's super soft for Scopefielder. So Humberstone setting the super soft tyres as Mike goes across the line. He will take what looks like probably the effective lead, or not the effective lead, will take the temporary lead of the race out in the soft tyres at the moment. But Humberstone is, he's continuing, sorry, on the super softs. I thought he'd come in, looked like he'd flashed up, he'd coming into the pit lane. Of course, he started on the super soft tyres, as these 3 battling over 6th, 7th and 8th at the moment, really going at it. And equally up ahead, Speed Queen 0.2 of a second behind De Lange. So we've got fighting right through the field at the moment. It's going to be pretty interesting. We'll see Tony here. We'll go on board with the Red Bull drivers. He looks towards the inside of Rick heading into turn 11, and it's soon to become what looks like a 5-car battle, possibly, with De Lange, Speed Queen, Stifler, Rick and Tony, with Nicky behind and SJT. So the battle was really tight, and this guy, the gears up as the Red Bull goes around the outside of Rick, the McLaren of Rick, down into turn. He's not going to get it slowed down in time. It's going to allow the McLaren to come back at him, and that's going to allow Nicky behind equally to try and get a move done on the Red Bull. And you can see, yeah, the field is really bunched up due to the pit stops at the moment. So yeah, pick your poison when it comes to watching what battle, because I believe it looks like from anywhere down from 4th down to 11th is pretty much engaged in the fight at the moment. So Kota has always brought up some excellent racing in Invictus, and of course you can check out all of our previous races on our YouTube channel, Invictus Racing League, so make sure you go and check out that and subscribe for all race streams that get uploaded to there. Oh, as we see the Force India having a look up the inside there of Delanga, so there was Stifler having a look up the inside. These two are going to go side by side as they head round turn 2. Stifler trying to hold around the inside. He has the inside for turn 3. Oh, as he just cuts in front of the Renault. Superb move back on the Renault driver for Stifler, who gets up ahead of the Dutchman. Having lost that position before the pit stops, he's got it back, but he's now the leader of this train of cars behind him. Force India, Renault, McLaren, Red Bull, Sauber, Renault and Toro Rosso all vying 5th position at the moment. It's allowing Speed Queen to get away at the moment, but we'll see back here. Renault, McLaren, Red Bull and the Sauber all with DRS. In fact, the entire field with DRS as we head down towards turn 12 there. So superb hours. Oh, Tony locking up down into turn 12. That's going to compromise him on the exit, with Nicky's going to look around the outside. And equally, SJD and Scott will both try and pick the bones when it comes to the Red Bull. Or as you see, almost 3 wide into turn 15 there. These guys really going at it in the midpoint of this race. We're on lap 11, just turned lap 12 of 28. Your leader is currently Humbostone on the super soft tyres on he started on. Mike SI, a set of soft compound tyres that he started on. He's just been overtaken by Scope, so Scope is currently your effective lead of the race. So Scope, having absolutely dominated qualifying, is now up into 2nd position, 10 seconds behind Humbostone. As we see here, the battle still raging as Tony started to fall back behind these guys, having made that mistake into turn 13, 14 and 15 last lap. He's sort of broken away from the field now, so it's Speed Queen that's now got Stifler for company with Delanga and Rick, whilst Tony now has Scott all over him Nicky has Scott all over him as the Toro Rosso is trying to find any way past as he's going to go side by side around turn 10, and Scott gets the move done into turn 10. SJD, you saw him just poking out, trying to get a look at him there, and yeah, Sav, it is a real train of these guys here as we will try and catch up with everyone fighting. It's hard to keep on board with everyone going on as Delanga 93 at the moment, 0.4 of a second behind Stifler 1980, who equally is just behind Speed Queen. These guys on the soft compounded tyres, they've done a few laps less than Speed Queen, so yeah, make sure guys drop into the comments, who do you think has got this? I mean, I think we can probably say, unless something drastically bad happens to Schofield, it looks like he might have this. And yeah, I tend to agree with you, Richard, that now Scope's cleared Mike. He thinks he's got this one as Stifler picks up another time penalty. I believe that's his second. But where is the podium going to go for these guys? We can see just how competitive the field is as Humbostone makes his first pit stop of the race. Nicky 9095 makes his as well. So Nicky, having stopped on the 2nd lap of the race, comes in for another stop there. So it's going to drop Nicky right back. Humbostone's dropped to the back of the field. You can see just how close the field was, is that the pit stops are now dropping you right to the back. So Humbostone has got it all to do as he moves on to the soft tyre. But it means that he's going to have much fresher tyres for the final portion of the race as we come through almost into 50% of the race so far. Delanga 93 still looking at the back of Stifler 1980 as they enter turn 11 into the DRS zone. We can see ahead it's Speed Queen, who's now starting to catch up to Mike, and it looks like Mike might let her go. He's gone defensive to the inside. Mike, he is known for being pretty difficult to get past, and he definitely a very good defensive driver, as we see the Force India still keeping that Renault at bay at the moment, and these two seem to have been glued to the hip of each other through the entire race as Mike opens the door. Is there going to be contact between the Force India and the Ferrari of Mike, and Mike slows down? He's going to let Delanga through, but possibly not seeing that Stifler had made the lunge down into turn 15 there. Unfortunately, the two picking up a little bit of contact. Didn't look like there was any damage there. Looks like Stifler's still got his end plates on either side, so just a little bit clumsy for these guys. It's blue flags up ahead at the moment. I think it's probably for Joel's car, I'd imagine. Yeah, it looks like it's a ghost car of Joel, unfortunately retired from the race earlier on. As De Lange 93 currently still behind the Force India, and he's going to want to get past as soon as possible. The other closest battles we've got on grid at the moment, Scott sitting 7/10 of a second behind Rick in 5th position at the moment. You've got Scope leading back now, leading the race up in 5.6 seconds ahead of Speed Queen on a different strategy to the Williams driver. So Scope and Speed Queen both on varying strategies at the moment, but it's 5.9 seconds, so the time is going up for the current leader. Stifler 1980 leads up the battle for 3rd and 4th at the moment. It looks like these two are going to go side by side down into turn 12. You can see Stifler's going to go deep. Both of them are going to close just about. Stifler had the outside. These two are still side by side as we enter turn 13 and turn 14. Stifler still keeping De Lange 93 behind him. Some brilliant defensive driving from the Force India driver tonight. He's doing a really good job at really frustrating De Lange, and you know that he's going to be frustrating. There's going to be a few choice words, I'm sure, in Dutch being said behind the helmet of that Renault cockpit, and he's going to want to clear this car as soon as possible, because he knows that any slight mistakes and it will be punished by the McLaren and the Toro Rosso of Rick and Scott. And credit goes to Scott, who of course had that issue on lap 1, back up into 6th position and still within a shout of a podium position at the moment. So don't count out Scott when it comes to the race or to the podium places. We've got Rick currently out there on 9 laps of ultra soft, so Rick will need to pit again and set a set of harder compound tyres on. So it looks like Rick will have to vacate that position to Scott, so it's another position to Scott eventually. He's got Tony Y behind him, and then the gaps are pretty neutralised between each other. Tony, SJD and Mike, as we see. Oh, it looked like, yeah, he has got the move done. So Scott diving down the inside of the McLaren. Of course, he will have much nicer tyre wear when it comes to the soft compound over those worn ultra softs, as De Lange's going once again to look to the outside, going down into turn 12 up against Stifler. He's going to hope that the Force India goes wide, but he doesn't. There's a nice line there for Stifler through turn 12 into turn 13. These two still going at it, and it feels like this might be a race-long duel for these lot. Of course, De Lange got the move done before the pit stops. After the pit stops, it was a brave move past De Lange for Stifler, who's managed to get back up into a current podium position. And yeah, it's Speed Queen currently. Yeah, you think, well, just as you say, Richard, that she can't finish the race on those super softs. She can't. She comes in for a pit stop, and she's going to drop right down. But it does mean that for the final 12 laps of the race, she will be mighty fast. As you see, De Lange looks like he goes a lot hotter into turn 1, but it's just the differing lines between us, and you can really see just how you can take this track in different positions. And it doesn't even look like he's going. It looked towards the start that Stifler was going defensive, but it looks like that's just his choice of line when it comes to turn 1, and these two still going at it. Of course, not an overtaking position anywhere in this complex unless someone goes drastically wide. You have to wait until you get down to turn 11 at the tight left-hander. Scott, of course, now he's cleared that McLaren of Rick, is starting to catch up to the back of these two, so he's going to insert himself in the battle for the podium. Here he goes again. So here goes De Lange up behind Stifler. Stifler going defensive once again, taking the inside line on the left-hand side. De Lange's going to have to go around the outside, but Stifler's just going to roll to the outside, and once again frustrating the Renault behind, making sure he puts it all in the right places. And what this is going to do, this is just going to allow Scott to crawl up lap upon lap to the rear end of De Lange, and these three, these three will start battling, and I'm sure Stifler is pretty much sick of seeing that yellow and black Renault behind him. I think he's now going to have to get used to seeing as you see a snap oversteer moment for Stifler, and that's going to really unsettle him as he comes out of the final corner now. So this is Delange's best opportunity now. Stifler is going to have to go defensive, and he does. He's trying to move one way, tries to go the other way. Delange's going to have to go around the outside. We know that Stifler likes taking the inside line here. Delange's going to try and go around the outside. There's contact between the two of them, and that's going to allow Scott to go around the outside of the Renault as we go around turn 2 in towards turn 3. They're side by side. Who's going to yield first? Neither of them are going to yield, and just about. Scott pulls out the throttle, but Delange's going to go wide. If you don't get the right line through these first complex, it really unsettles you through the rest of them. So these guys really battling over second, third and fourth at the moment. It was a little bit scrappy for those three of them there, as we saw contact between the Renault and the Force India into turn 1. Scott then trying to get out the inside. It looked like Delange was not going to have any of it. Shut the door on him. Luckily he didn't get turned around by the Toro Rosso. As they go down the DRS straight towards turn 12, Scott not quite close enough to get a move done on the Renault. So we see Tony Y currently 0.8 of a second behind Rick at the moment. Those guys have just stopped for a set of super softs, so they're running the supers to the end. Speed Queen has come out in 7th position, 5.4 seconds behind Humberstone. So those two battling over the title. Looks like Speed Queen is she's losing out on points, but it looks like she might only need going to be a couple of points heading into next week. She only needs 8 to win the title, and currently she's picking up 4 points, so she will only need 4 next week out. In Interlagos, Brazil, for the final race of our first season in F1 2018, the Invictus Racing League Gnosis Championship. Humberstone does the fastest lap of the race at 1:37.051. But these guys still battling over second, third and fourth. We've got Stifler 1980, Delange 93 and Boy Bennett OSB coming around through turn 8 and into turn 9 now. The left-hand turn, there we go, turn 9 through the kink at turn 10. Now this is interesting. They're all very close to each other as we enter into turn 11. Scott, he just about gets it slowed down, doesn't pick any front wing damage there, but this might mean, I think you might see the Force India being a bit of a sitting duck here. He's going to get dragged from both behind. The Renault's going to have to go to the outside once again, and we see Delange trying to go around the outside. These two still going at it, and the race driver in Scott just says sit behind him. Look, and you can see the opportunistic move there. He's going to try and go around the inside of both of them. There's contact between the two, the Force India and the Renault. As they just get missed by SJD there. They just managed to avoid contact. Really, I'm sure that SJD would have had an absolute heart attack there as he came around that corner and saw the sister Renault and the Force India in the middle of the road. And really unfortunate there for those two to unfortunately get tangled up with each other. We saw such a brilliant battle between them, and they are still going at it. I believe Stifler may have slowed down to allow Delange to catch up to him once again, and it looks like he's pulled to the inside and he's going to let him go. So great sportsmanship there for the Force India driver. Lets Delange through, lets us re-engage with this battle, but unfortunately, you can see he's not willing to give up. He said, well, I've given you the place back, you can have it, but now it's started, I'm going again, and we're going to go once again. We're going to go side by side, but this time, instead of being joined by Scott, they've now been joined by Humberstone, who's got himself interjected into this position, or into this fight for now 4th position, and it's SJD who's benefited, currently now in 3rd position. However, he's done 15 laps on those soft tyres, so SJD will be starting to feel the effects of it. Scott at the moment now 2nd position, so having made up all those positions back that he lost at the start. So Scott will not be too happy. I think he probably could have thought that he would have given Scope a little bit of a run for his money if the race had continued going. As we see there, Stifler and Humberstone battling over 5th and 6th. Humberstone's going to try and go around the outside into turn 12. Stifler, we know he's very good at defending, doesn't quite do it this time, possibly doesn't want to have the same thing happen once again, as we see Humberstone moving up into 5th, and behind Speed Queen's now got Nikki 9095 for company. So Speed Queen falling back and Humberstone making up places. So Speed Queen starting to... she's been on the tyres for the least amount of time out of anyone, so she should be getting them to work. Nikki's done 6 laps, she's only done 3, but Nikki possibly looking like he's got a little bit more confidence, taking that that high and positivity from the race win last week in Singapore, and he's going to have DRS on the Williams driver heading up into turn 1. Does he make a lunge into it? Does Speed Queen think, oh, it's going to be really close? But Nikki making the dive up the inside. Does Speed Queen allow him the space? She does, but they're going to go side by side going round turn 2. She looks just about like she's maintained the position she has, so Nikki having to still stay in 8th position, and now starting to attract the attention of Rick, who's starting to catch up as, oh, Speed Queen really slow at the exit there of turn 5. It's now invited the McLaren back into the party. Humberstone now 0.2 of a second behind DeLanger 93 for 4th position. I will go back and check in with that battle between Speed Queen now, so I don't want to flick too much. I know it can be disorientating for you guys, so if you want to see a battle, let me know which one you want to see. And Nikki has got DRS on Speed Queen ahead. Nikki going to go to the outside. Speed Queen once again is going to take the inside line, try and defend against the Sauber. They're going to go wide, tapping wheels, and that's going to allow Rick and the McLaren to go around the outside of Nikki, possibly. Nikki not wanting to yield at all, and he runs that McLaren right out onto the edge, onto the marbles, and Tony Y now in the Red Bull starting to join this battle. So I think these guys are really trying to make me lose my voice and make sure that I don't stop talking for a second, because there's been battles up and down the grid all race long, and you can see just how competitive this race has been from start to finish. The McLaren looks like he's going to sail down the inside. There's contact between the two, and it looks like there might be a slight bit of wing damage there for someone. I couldn't quite see who it was, but this is going to give Tony Y behind the impetus to get past, and the McLaren's got the inside line. Nikki's got the outside, but Tony's going to dive down the inside. Does he go down the inside of the McLaren? He doesn't quite, but he's going to run out wide. It looks like him and Nikki are going to go side by side now down into turn 2, into turn 3, but it's the inside line for the Red Bull. Looks like Nikki's going to have to yield, and he does. So Tony getting the move done on Nikki, who was attacking Speed Queen 2 laps before, and now finds himself 2 positions down. Speed Queen's made up a little bit of time, but unfortunately Nikki going from 8th to 10th pretty quickly, with Rick and Tony both utilising much fresher and softer compound tyres to get past. You can see Rick now right on the rear end of Speed Queen as they go out of turn 11 towards DRS straight. So yeah, it's going to be the McLaren. He's going to have to really pull in behind that Williams. Of course, 2 slightly underpowered. Well, I say slightly underpowered cars. That depends on your depiction of what a slightly underpowered car is. I'm sure I'd like to get up and drive one of these today to work, but it's the McLaren that's just about keeping in contention for 7th position with Speed Queen 80, the champion-elect for Tier 1. And she's currently leading Rick by 3/10 of a second, with Tony Y now 5/10 back from those two. As we see DeLanger 93.5 of a second behind Humberstone at the moment, so DeLanger not giving up on 4th position at all. You can see them heading up the hill now. So DeLanger 0.3 of a second behind at the moment. They're going to have speed. Oh, as we see contact there between Rick and Speed Queen, and he gives her a little bit of a tap there, and that's going to allow Tony to come down the inside. And Tony, opportunistic as you like, saw Rick have a slight bit of a slight mishap there, maybe just underestimated his braking point ever so slightly. Didn't look like there was any front wing damage for the McLaren there, but it allowed Tony to sail up the inside. Really brave move there, possibly from past a unsighted McLaren driver of Rick WR88. And it looks like Tony has got the position now, so it's going to be Tony that's now attacking the rear end of Speed Queen. I'm pretty sure she'll be pretty sick of having to look in her rear mirrors. Every time she looks, there's a different coloured car there. She was it's been Nikki, it's been Rick, it's been Tony, and each one of them has yet been able to get past. But the Red Bull will have way more power around this circuit than that Williams have, and it will easily also be a lot handier around these slower corners. You see that, yeah, the braking and the cornering speed so much better for the Red Bull compared to the Williams. as you see, so having a quick look on 23 of 28 laps gone. Schofield leads the race at the moment, 13.4 seconds ahead of Scott, who's currently in second place. He's going to have to try and do another 5 laps on his tyres. You see McLaren trying to go down the inside there. It would have been a pretty brave move from Rick, as they're going to go side by side. Rick's actually got the position heading up into turn 1. He had the DRS, so Tony, having now dropped back once again, he's going to have a look round to the outside. Is he going to go around the outside? It'd be a pretty spectacular move, but we've seen him make some already. Not quite. These two still battling over 8th and 9th, and this has given Speed Queen a bit of a respite. She seems to have someone attack her, and then they fall back, and then we all seem to swap positions, and it's a little bit of Alice's tea party. And it looks like at the moment it's going to be Rick, but he goes wide, and that's going to allow Tony up the kink of turn 10, and he gets the move done down towards turn 11. Does Rick try and fight it, or he doesn't? So he's going to have to try and go for a switchback. Not quite. The McLaren's going to have to sit in the toe of the Red Bull, and we'll go on board with Rick here as he sits behind that Red Bull down. Both have got DRS. He's not quite close enough. That McLaren Renault not powerful enough, as you see both locking up into turn 12 there. Yeah, going back down through the field, Scott's in second. Humberstone's now up into third, and we'll go on board. In fact, we'll check in with SJD 1988, who's 7/10 of a second behind Humberstone in fourth position. He's got Delanger 93 not far behind, with the two Renaults in fourth and fifth. Stifler's 1.1 second behind them in sixth position. Speed Queen, it's got a little bit of a break now. It's a pit stop for SJD, who, yeah, so it's 19 laps on those soft tyres, so it's been a real fight for him to stay out on track. You can't really do that much longer than what he's done. So really decent race for SJD. It's just a shame he's had to come in, but he will be able to put on a set. I imagine it looks like he's gone for super softs. It's a shame he could have put a set of ultra softs in there and been blindingly quick over the final few laps. So Humberstone, yeah, as you say, Sab, now up into third position, so a podium position for him at the moment, with Speed Queen in sixth position, but with a list of, as she picks up a 3-second time penalty, with a list of suitors behind to happily take sixth position off of her. And it's now Tony that's going to have another go once again as we look towards an 11 here. Is, yeah, the tight left-hand turn. He's going to kick the rear end out there, but get into the slipstream of the Williams head. Doesn't look like he's too close behind, so he might have to wait another lap if he's going to get the move done. Not quite here, so you can see still the closest batter on track, 0.3 of a second, but Tony not able to get that move done. And I'm sure, guys, if you've as we see them going past the ghosted vehicle of Joel there, unfortunately retired earlier on in the race after lap 1 damage. Unfortunately pitted him early, and then picking up a penalty, I believe. Possibly a slightly frustrating evening for Joel, who didn't qualify where he wanted and equally could not find the race pace. And you see this time that Red Bull tucked way into the gearbox of the Williams ahead. So this is a brilliant opportunity for Tony White in the Red Bull. Is Speed Queen going to go to the inside? Is she going to defend? No, she doesn't. She almost lets him past, and Tony White gets the move done, and Speed Queen doesn't quite have anything to come back at him with. Tony White on the fresher tyres. They will start going off in the next few laps compared to her softs, which may last a little bit better. But Tony moves up in sixth, and with Speed Queen now down in seventh and Humberstone in third position. This is working perfectly for Humberstone when it comes to taking points off of her. But he picks up a 3-second time penalty, and I believe that's either his second or third. So we know, like we said earlier, it's so easy to pick up time penalties around here, as SJD then also proves my point. So this is a point in the race. Towards the end, people are starting to get tired. You're starting to lose concentration and push possibly a little bit too hard. And these guys are picking up some penalties that they may rue at the end, as we see the Red Bull not defend from the Williams, and Speed Queen sails back down the inside. So that Williams has still got the power to go past the Red Bull down the straight, and McLaren is still not giving up on these either. Rick's decided to just sit behind and just, as you see Tony running him out onto the rumble strips there, possibly a little bit unsighted, not seeing how close behind Rick was. But these three still battling over 6th, 7th and 8th. They're the closest battle on grid. Yeah, so feel free, guys. As Sab says, who would you give driver of the day to? He would say Scope, and I mean, you can't really bet against Scope for the driver of the day here. Although we've seen Tony White make another move up the inside onto Speed Queen into turn 1, just like he did 2 laps ago. But looks like Speed Queen is going to have to do it all over again if she's going to get back into 6th position. So yeah, Scope would be the driver of the day. So far, of course, you don't want to drop the commentator's curse on him. Nikki 9905 picking up a 3-second time penalty there. But he's been absolutely fantastic. Flag to flag victory for Scope, having led the race the entire way, bar the pit stops, when obviously the harder compound runners managed to jump him. But it is pretty much a flag-to-flag victory for the Swedish driver, and he's really deserved it. It's been an absolutely superb result for Scope, and that doesn't bode well for the guys tomorrow night in Performance 2 that have to race against Scope, and he'll be high on confidence. And if you want to check out that race, it'll be, it's a very late lunch for Speed Queen, and she collects the Red Bull of Tony, and Tony then loses the position to the McLaren of Rick. So it was a really late lunge there from Speed Queen, possibly a little bit brave, a little bit over eager. She realised there's only 2 laps left, and she wanted to get she knows that with Humberstone way further up the grid that she needed to get as many points as possible. Made a very, very brave lunge into turn 12 there. And what that's meant is Tony's now dropped behind, but he's going to try and go up the inside of Rick, and these guys still battling. And Speed Queen, Speed Queen slows, and it's really unsighted Rick there, and Rick coming into contact with Nikki, who's managed to catch up to this trainer guys here. So Nikki out there on 14-lap old softs has managed to catch right up. But it's Speed Queen who gets back up into 6th position ahead of Tony after contact into turn 12. Unfortunately for Rick, he just got unsighted into turn 20, the final corner. Speed Queen possibly slowing a little bit more than he was expecting. He then had to run out wide, and when coming back onto the circuit, didn't realise there was going to be a Sauber on his left-hand side. So Rick now once again dropping back to 9th position. So changing of the guard and changing of places once again between these guys in the rear end of the race. And they say that the battles only go on at the top, but we can see all the way down through the field all race long we've had battles within a second. And yeah, this is definitely it should be getting your appetite up and your mouth watering for some pretty explosive racing over the week. So make sure you check out Performance 1 and 2 tomorrow night, F1, F2 and F3 on Wednesday nights. You can catch all of the stream links on our Twitter at Invictus RL. Make sure you check out all of the streams and follow the streams. Make sure you click that follow button, get us to the position where we can hopefully get partnered, and it will be a huge benefit to us for the league if we could get up to a situation where we can self-sustain ourselves. There's Tony running wide on the exit turn 19 there. Is he still up behind Speed Queen? I'm sure he's not going to be too happy, and Rick picks up a 3-second time penalty, and Tony, with 1 lap left to go, will look to possibly attack Speed Queen down into turn 12. And what we will do is Scott picks up a 3-second time penalty. Looks like he's 7 seconds ahead of Humberstone, so we'll look to see how penalties affect the guys at the end of the race. What we will do is we'll sit with these guys as they go through turns 3, 4 and 5, but we'll see Schofield across the line as he takes victory in the American Grand Prix at the Circuit of the Americas, Austin, Texas, in round 11, the Invictus Racing League No Assist Championship. But Tony's still looking at the inside of Speed Queen as we come round, and we'll just quickly check on board with Scope, who's coming around the final few corners now. There's Tony Y still 3.3 of a second behind, I do want to check it, but Tony's going to go dive down to the inside. It looks like Scope's going to come across the line as these two battling over. And I will say congratulations to Scopefielder, who's going to cross the line, and he does. Sorry for not catching it on stream, but Scopefielder is your race leader. I really do want to catch it, but these two still battling over, and Nicky is still trying to get himself interjected in this battle. It looks like Speed Queen's going to hold off Tony Y, and it looks like it's going to come down to penalties with these guys. I believe Tony's picked up quite a few, so he can find himself dropping down even further on. So congratulations to Scope, Scott and Humberstone, who take your podium positions for tonight. Delanger picks up another credible 4th position. Stifler another great position in 5th, and it's Speed Queen in 5th. Stifler drops down to 6th, so Speed Queen moving up into 5th. So brilliant points needed there for Speed Queen if she's going to get the overall championships. Tony is in 7th, Rick comes in 8th, SJD comes into 9th, and it looked like Mike might have even dropped up into the final point there into 10th position. And wow, what do you say about that race? It was action from the lights out to the checkered flag, and almost lost for words with just how good we saw some of the guys racing around there. Possibly a little bit clumsy into a few corners, but equally there was some absolutely superb overtakes. We were treated to a real good show there from a lot of the drivers out on track, but it's Scopefielder that takes an absolutely dominant victory for the Haas team, and Haas in their home race take a 1st and a 3rd place finish. So Gunther Steiner will be absolutely delighted with that, as Scopefielder takes 1st position. You see there, no penalties whatsoever. Scott comes in 2nd in the Toro Rosso, with Humberstone in 3rd, Delanger 93 in 4th, with Speed Queen in 5th. Stifler 1980 comes in 6th, with Tony Y in 7th. Rick moves into 8th, SJD in 9th. And Mike comes home and he manages to pick up 10th position after Nicky picks up 18 seconds of penalties there. So Nicky down in 11th position. Unfortunately, we lost Joel. So we see there the timing, and then we'll go quickly through the penalty screen for everyone. So you can see a lot of track extending and multiple warnings for everyone there. So there we go, down to the bottom. So yeah, that was your race victory for Scopefielder. Scott coming in 2nd place. Humberstone will be delighted to come in 3rd, having started 8th on the grid. Equally, Speed Queen, having started 10th, will be delighted with that 5th place finish. I'm sure Stifler will be not best pleased, having raced pretty well throughout the race, to drop down to 6th. Involved, of course, in that incident with Delanger earlier, with around 8 or low, I believe it was around 8 laps left to go. So unfortunate incident between the Force India and the Renault team. But yeah, thanks very much, Richard. Yeah, it's been a hard one to take a breath through this one, and guys, don't expect that to be the only one that we'll see this week. I'm sure we will see some absolutely fantastic racing tomorrow night in Performance 1 and Performance 2, where you can check out Malk will be commentating on Performance 1, and then Rick will be commentating on Performance 2, and then on Wednesday you've got F1, F2 and F3. So make sure you check out the Twitter at Invictus RL for all of the stream updates. If you'd like to join up and you're new to Invictus, go to our website invictusracingleagues.com, go up to the sign up page where you can drop in your details and speak to one of the admin, and we'll get you on the grid for next season, which will be in a few weeks' time. And then make sure you, if you want to follow me for any updates on streams or anything going on within the Invictus community, it's at GT2_driving on Twitter. And equally, join us next week, Monday night, for the last and final race in the Season 1 2018 game. We'll be at Interlagos in Brazil for what looks like it will be a crowning of Speed Queen, unless something drastically goes wrong, and Speed Queen taking the inaugural F1 2018 no assist overall no assist crown. So thank you very much for joining me tonight. It's been great having you all in the stream, all engaging and sending in comments. It's always great to be joined by a load of people all getting engaged, and it's always good to see you enjoying the race. I'm glad we could provide you with some superb entertainment tonight. So make sure you join us tomorrow night and on Wednesday night. But for me and for tonight, I've been Gareth, and it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and I will see you next week.